What is going on, YouTube people? Northeast Ohio Cards and Comics here today to make some predictions for the 2022 year ahead, specifically tied to the world of grading. Going to run through the companies, kind of make some predictions, see what I get right, see what I get wrong next year, kind of go over some general trends that I could potentially see happening, and curious for your thoughts and opinions down below. So as we move through these, feel free to make any predictions that you may or may not have along with me in the comments. Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and let's get started. Let's talk broadly first. I think, and I mentioned this on a few live streams on some other channels, and just in general, and it's never really gone away, but I feel like it doesn't get talked about like it once did because of all the backlogs and the expense in grading. But I feel like 2022 is going to be the year when it comes full circle, and potentially one of the best / most consistent ways to consistently make money in sports cards is going to come back around, and that is going to be raw to grade. Now, it never really left. You could still be doing it with SGC, to a much lesser extent CSG, and with the right cards, BGS and PSA for the higher end stuff. But for a lot of people, it became a lot more difficult. I do feel like it's going to come back around as PSA's prices get cheaper, which I believe, kind of tipping my hand here, will have a downward impact on the other companies also having them lower prices. Now, resale values will probably be lower on the secondary market as well for slabs, but I can see raw to grade making a major comeback in the year ahead. Once again, for the last 2 years, all you've heard about is, for the most part, is, buy X card in a PSA 10, hold it for like a week, and then it'll go up 150,000%. Doesn't work like that anymore. It's a new game. It's a new world. Raw to grade, like I said, has always been around. It kind of went away. It adapted, it changed, but I feel like it's going to circle back to that point. Now, you're still going to need to pick the right cards. You're going to need to do the math to send them to the right company, because I think every, or at least most of the companies, will have some type of role to play in the upcoming year. So I do feel like that's going to be one of the major things that we see. The other thing that I believe that we see, so that's prediction number one, raw to grade comes back to the forefront of the hobby. When I first started making videos and got back in, and even prior to me getting back in, raw to grade was 100% a play. I did it quite a bit, not quite a bit, but I did it a decent amount. I did it a lot with Marvel cards, obviously. Did it with SGC, did it with PSA, and even at one point in time sent cards to BGS. Sounds crazy now, but... So that's first one. Second, broad-based prediction, and then we'll kind of get into some company-specific ones. I feel like 2022 will be the year that we lose some grading companies. 2021 was the rise of random grading companies. No offense to anyone in particular, just in general, a lot of 3-letter acronym grading companies popped up this past year. I'm not targeting any one of you individually. I'm just saying there's a lot of you out there now. And I have a feeling as we move throughout 2022, we are going to lose some of them. I don't know which ones, but some are going to fall off the wayside. And I'm not talking about the big boys, the PSA, the BGS, SGC, CSG. We'll talk about HGA separately. But all the other pop-up ones, I feel like are in some sort of dire straits, if not no longer existing by the end of the year. Now, I don't know their books. I don't know their individual stuff. I'm just speaking broadly and generally. Now, why do I think this? PSA, whether you like them or not, is still the dominant player in the industry by far. They are grading 300 to 400,000 cards a month as it stands, sometimes upwards of 40,000 cards in a day. And those numbers continue to climb. They are continuing to expand, and they are even opening up a second office in New Jersey. As they continue to expand, they are going to continue to lower prices. We'll talk about that more when we get to PSA specifically. They're going to continue to lower prices. As they lower prices, they are going to suck demand away from, or suck cards away from, the other grading companies. And it's going to start at the bottom and work its way up. But the fly-by-night ones, the pop-up ones, are going to be the ones that I think are impacted first. Because they're not getting many orders to begin with. You know, you look at some of the census data for some of the small ones. There's some people on Facebook that tracks this stuff that post in some of the groups. You know, they're only adding 500 to 1,000 cards a month to their census if they even have a census. All of a sudden, that stuff's going to start heading a different direction. Whether it's to PSA or not. Because here's the thing. As PSA starts accepting more cards and starts lowering their prices, that's going to have an impact on all the other major players. I could see SGC price drops, BGS, who the hell knows, potential CSG pricing changes. And that's going to entice more people, even if you hate PSA, to want to grade with like an SGC instead of insert random 3-letter acronym here, when, you know, SGC is a much more reputable company and may be cheaper with some price changes, depending on what's going on. So I think it's going to drastically hurt those smaller pop-up companies. And I honestly will be curious to see how they survive in, you know, the new world order. Plus, there's less people in the hobby now than when it was booming, and less cards make sense to grade with the prices coming down on the secondary market. So it's not just send every single card off. Yes, some people are still going to want random base cards graded for set registry stuff, and just because maybe they PC the player, whatever. And I'm not faulting anyone. Grade whatever you want to grade. As long as you're willing to pay for it, send in whatever the hell you want to send in. I don't care. But that stuff will continue to drop down as a lot of people grade for the financial aspect of it. And as prices decrease on the secondary market, less things make sense to grade. You know, you're not sending in Gavin Lux base tops paper anymore to pretty much anywhere and actually turn any sort of profit on that. So in the past, that stuff would get flooded to the grading companies. Now, not so much. People are a lot smarter, and the market is in a much different place than it has been the last year and a half to 2 years. So, needless to say, the amount of inventory on the market is going to be less that needs to be graded. And as PSA prices more and more aggressively, I think that has a downward impact on all the companies in general. So, I do feel like a lot of the fly-by-nighters might not be around come this time next year. Let's go ahead and talk about the individual companies themselves. We'll start with PSA first. They've already unveiled regular prices back at $100 a card. You know, we'll see what that looks like, how the queue system works, and they've already teased economy service back at $50 a card for Collectors Club members only at this point. I think as we move through the first 6 months of this year, we will continue to see them use that queue system and various different leverage points. I could also see at some point in time regular price dropping to $75 a card. I do not think $100 a card is where they want regular to be at. I think they did it at that point to halfway throttle submissions along with the queue. I think what they'll find is there's cards that make sense at that level, but there's not a ton of cards that make sense at that level. And once people kind of grade through that, now new product will be coming out, and then that'll make sense to send it at that level. But regardless, I feel like there's not a lot of stuff that makes sense there. I think that eventually pulls back to $75. I think economy starts at $50, and I think economy ends up at around $30, maybe $35. But I feel like they really like to get that down to $25 to $35. And then value sub $20, I think, comes back middle of the year like they have been talking about. So essentially where I think this ends up by middle of this year is we get some type of bulk submission service back. It'll be sub $20, maybe $15, maybe even $10. But there will be some sort of restrictions, especially on if there's like a super cheap $10 tier. And I believe it'll be tied to, as they've talked about, the set registry stuff, Collectors Club members, that sort of thing. And maybe it's not open to the wind where you could just send everything that you want, but there'll be restrictions on it. But I do think we see sub $20 PSA grading with maybe some type of special sometimes for $10 grading this year. I think economy I think a general bulk rate ends up being about $15 to $20. I think economy ends up being I'll just call it 30. I think it's between 25 and 35. I'll just split the difference and call it 30 for economy. I think regular service ends up being about 75. And I think Express and Super Express stay where they're at. I think Express at 150 and Super Express at 300 don't change much. Maybe they come down ever so slightly, like 250 and 125 or something like that. But I don't know that I see those levels changing much. The declared value is very high on those levels. I don't see them changing that. So that's what I kind of think the price predictions are. I think we see some of this stuff by the middle of the year. And I think by the end of the year, by the time we get to fall to early winter next year, as I've joked about before, PSA at that point will be a fully operational battle station. And they will price aggressively to, one, take market share, and two, you don't build out all those facilities not to have them not grading cards. And if you want to grade cards, you are going to have to price it to get cards in the door. So there's going to have to be some low tier price options. And like I said, they may throttle that with the queues and that sort of thing. I fully expect that, especially early on. And I think they'll monitor that. There might be a point in time where the queues go away and you could freely submit. But if they see a backlog start the building again, I could see them spinning the queues back up. Once again, I'm talking like late 2022 for some of this stuff is my guess. So that's my PSA predictions. Will they continue to be the market leader in regards to price? I'm going to say yes. I don't know that that's that hot of a take. I don't see anyone drastically poised to potentially overtake them. Maybe get closer. I could see potentially, and we'll talk about some other predictions here in a minute. But I still think we end 2022 with PSA being the highest value secondary market slab that there is. We'll see if the gap remains, but I still think they are the most expensive on the secondary market in regards to resale value. Beckett. Boy, I would love to tell you what I think they're going to do this upcoming year, but man, what I would like to see out of them is some freaking communication, just anything. I feel like Beckett is going to go one of two paths. Either not much is going to change and it's just going to be status quo out of them, and you don't really hear much, not much really changes. Maybe pricing's adjusted at some point in time. There's just, they feel so complacent. Like they don't even want to do anything. Like they don't really have a need to do anything. They don't care to do anything. They're happy to just putter along, doing what they're doing, making whatever money that they're going to make. And, it is what it is. The other half of me thinks someone comes in and potentially either throws a bunch of money at them for an investment side of things and or just straight buys them. I feel less likely about that than I do, the previously mentioned. I feel like them just puttering along is more likely. I think part of it is wish fulfillment, as I would like to see Beckett be a viable player again. And they do make sense for some stuff, RPAs, sticker cards, things that you're not 100% sure that could get a PSA 10 or, you crack a PSA 9 and you send it to them to try to get a BGS 9.5, like that sort of stuff. There'll be this weird niche angle for. They still have the name. A lot of people still love the subgrades, like their auto grades, that sort of stuff. I really like their cases. I like their slabs. I like CSGs a little better, not the label part, but the actual slab itself. But I like the inner liner. There's just a lot of things I like about the BGS slab in general. But BGS as a company has just been, I don't know, when's the last time we heard from them? Anything, one way or the other. The last thing I think we heard of them was super snarky. So my prediction for them is that they spend most of the year just puttering along and eventually maybe open up some additional services. We get lower, more normal pricing as demand lessens and as they begin to clear their backlog. But I think they're stuck most of the year still just playing catch up because they kind of want to be. I really don't think there's a lot of motivation there for them to dump a bunch of money in and improve the product. So I wish I had a better feel for them, but my gut tells me that they just don't do much. SGC. SGC had a really good year overall. You could argue that they are even to have passed Beckett in some regards, at least on secondary sales pricing, and I'm strictly speaking modern to ultra modern here, not vintage. In some stuff, an SGC 10 will outsell a BGS 9.5, and some stuff it doesn't. A lot of it depends on the BGS 9.5 subgrades. But I think we can continue to see, rather, SGC carve out that second place spot on the pecking order. I think they could. I'm gonna say this very loosely. Potentially narrow the gap a little more with PSA, with one significant change, and I think it would be a massive deal for them. And maybe it's coming. I would love, oh please, dear Lord, love to see a slab and label redesign for them. I've never liked their slab that much since I first had one on hand. I know the SGC fanboys will get mad about this. I don't care. To me, and a lot of other people agree with me on this, they feel cheap, and I just don't like the label. I also hate the fact that they are slightly larger than everything else, and they just don't fit in a case correctly. Just make them the same size as a BGS slab if you want to be a little bit larger. I get it. But I really think they need, and they could keep the tuxedo, that's fine. I don't mind. The black on certain cards looks really good. On some cards, it doesn't look very good, but on some cards, it really pops. But if they could please redesign the slab, redesign the label, give it a more modern look, and shrink it down just a little bit, I think would go a long way for them. Because a lot of people do enjoy using them, and they still do make sense for a lot of cards on the market. Now, as PSA's price drop, is that still going to be the case? You know, if PSA gets back down to $30 a card, how hard is that going to affect SGC's, inventory on hand to grade? So my big prediction here is that we see a redesigned slab and label. Peter has teased that big things are coming after the first of the year. I think it's going to be a slab and label redesign. I know nothing. I have absolutely zero inside information with them at all. I'm not a group submitter. I have no contacts with anyone down there, other than the fact that I have used them over a year ago and sent some cards to them and some emails that I exchanged with customer service at that time. That's it. So I know nothing, Jon Snow, but that's my prediction with them. We get a slab and label redesign, and it gives them a little boost. I don't think they pass PSA at all. I don't think it gets that close, but I do think that they eat into them a little bit, especially the beginning part of the year. And then I think PSA maybe re-widens the gap with a major price decrease for PSA services. We'll see. But the one thing I am adamant about is I do think that they firmly established themselves, especially if they redesign the slab and the label. I think they blow past Beckett. Beckett has the name, I'll give him that, and Beckett has the subgrades, and a lot of people like those, but there's a small niche of people that are continuing to use Beckett on a daily basis for a majority of their cards. They are, a select bullet in the holster. You only shoot certain ones that way. Not everything goes there. They're a tool. They're a very specific tool, and very specific cards should go to Beckett, but not everything should go there. So we'll see what happens there. And I should have mentioned this on the Beckett side of things. For the Beckett fanboys that like to try to submit to Beckett and everything should go to Beckett because a BGS 10 outsells everything else and maybe you'll get a black label, listen. BGS 10 and BGS black label is purely blind luck. There's no skill to it. It's purely blind luck. Submitting to them with anticipation that you're getting a BGS 10 or a black label is a fool's errand, and you will never convince me otherwise. So calm down, Beckett fanboys. Let's talk CSG. CSG, we've talked about this a bunch. They are the worst on the secondary market in regards to the comps. I don't think that changes until they unveil whatever they're doing with their label redesign. We all know the label redesign is most likely coming. I assume that we see it probably in the first quarter of this upcoming year. And then it's all going to come down to, I'm hesitant to say much about them because it's going to depend on what the label redesign looks like. As dumb as that sounds, the label matters, and how good or bad the label looks matters, because Whether we all like it or not, people buy the slab and the label, not the card inside, especially on ultra modern. Vintage, a little bit of a different story. Ultra modern, people care more about the label and the slab and the brand and all that other happy nonsense. CSG, if they can nail their label redesign, may pick up some market share and may help their secondary market values. There are two major problems with CSG right now, and I don't know if it changes. The resale value is not great. It's the worst of all of them, and it's not even close. Two, the label is hideous. I'm going to throw in an extra one here. Three, a lot of people, whether it's true or not, have the perception that they actually grade too hard, too tough. So here's the problem. People use CSG to try them out. They send their cards in. They feel like they're not fairly graded or feel like they are overly graded, like they're graded a little too tough. That puts a sour taste in their mouth. Now they get their cards back and they try to sell them, and then they quickly find out how low CSG comps actually are. Now that pisses them off. That makes them way less likely to use them a second time. That's a problem. So how they nail this label is going to dictate a lot, because I've said this a bunch on the channel. From the neck down, from the label and lower, they are the best slab on the market, and it is not even close. They feel so good in hand, they feel super sturdy, and they are crystal clear. They need to fix the label, and they might need to slightly loosen up on their grading standards for a little bit. People don't necessarily want the hardest grade in the world. They want a fair grade. If there's some super microscopic thing on the surface, I don't think that should ding it that hard. It's more about the eye appeal, and can you see it with the bare human eye? I feel like I personally, and I haven't graded with them myself personally, just from what I've seen and from what I've seen looking at cards and slabs and from feedback I've gotten from people that use them, a lot of people feel like they grade surface too hard. And you kind of see that in there when you look at a lot of their cards, subgrades. A lot of times you see the surface really pounded hard on some of their cards. I just want fair grades. Whoever I use, I just want fair grades. So my big prediction for them is that we 100% see a label change. And then, like I said, it's really going to depend on how that label hits. I think regardless, even if the label's really, really good, it's going to take them most of the year to kind of recover from the mistakes that they have already made. But I do think that they continue to establish themselves as number 4. Technically, on the resale side, HGA stuff outsells them to some degree, depending on what it is. I think they end up passing up HGA, and we'll close with HGA. I think they end up passing HGA and firmly establish themselves as the 4th option in the hobby. Maybe creep on BGS if BGS just does absolutely nothing this year. But a lot of it's going to come down to how good or bad this label looks, as silly as it sounds. So hard to give too many hard predictions on them, because it's so much comes down to that label. Once again, it sounds silly, but anything has to be better than what they currently have. So we'll see where that goes from here. Last but not least, I don't talk about them often on the channel anymore, our good friends over at HGA. HGA seems like they are the hottest of hot messes to end the year. There's been talks of the layoff stuff and all that stuff going on, where there's been a lot of layoffs over there. They have a massive backlog. They are way over on days. It's cute to remember the days when they were, and I don't really see, this is the part I don't understand. Their whole pitch was where 10 days meant 10 days. Okay, cool. That was an interesting concept, very smart. You're doing something no one else is doing. And then to manage that process, they put a queue in place. And to control the flow of orders coming in, to allow 10 days to be 10 days. And then somewhere along the lines, that just got completely off the tracks. And I get, COVID happened, a bunch of shenanigans happened, whatever. And I'm not even talking about the stuff that they have done, you know, in regards to fakes and autographs and all of that, just from an operations standpoint. You know you're sliding out of control. Why are you have the queue system? Why are you continuing to let cards come into the building if your whole backbone of your company is AI grading and where 10 days means 10 days or 30 days means 30 days or whatever? Clearly you knew things were getting out of control. Why didn't you pump the brakes, close the floodgates, and say, hey, queue shut down till we get caught up? Instead, you're laying people off and you're running holiday sales for 20 to 30% off order, whatever it was. I don't remember what it was, but they ran a holiday sale before Christmas for discounted grading fees. That doesn't look great when you're really far over business day wise on orders that are already in the building. In addition to that, you do have all the other stuff going on with fakes, autos, all that jazz. The whole, do you even authenticate cards? You guys had that really weird video about the AI aspect of what you've had going on. Tyler was supposed to make guest appearances that I know of on multiple YouTube channels. He was scheduled to go on and talk about what was going on at the company, give updates, whatever. This was over the last month or two, and no-showed on both content creators that he did that to. One was Retro Hoops Collectibles. The other one I don't want to mention because I am not sure if it's public knowledge yet or not, or if he made it public knowledge, and I don't want to be the one to out that. But there was another, Retro Hoops Collectibles made a video about it just last week that he had it all lined up, time set, schedule set, and no communication. They just no-showed. He was on the call or whatever, and he just no-showed. I know of one other YouTuber that the same exact thing happened, that there was multiple calls set up, and he no-showed all of them. At least one or two calls, I believe, where they just straight no-showed. So, once again, not a great look. My prediction here is that they continue to spiral out of control, and I wouldn't be surprised if HGA exists by the end of the year. We'll see. They need a major overall reset / timeout, get it together type situation right now. I feel like they are drastically spiraling out of control. You hang out on there, go check out their Facebook page and stuff like that. You can see more and more people getting grumpy about where are my orders at, you know, that sort of thing. You're starting to feel that buzz. And the secondary market, prices are still okay on some of their stuff. I haven't done a deep dive lately on their prices. I didn't look at them last time I went down the various grading companies. But the confidence on the secondary market in regards to wanting to own a card in one of their slabs, especially something high value, is not real high. There was a card the other day. What was it? I think it was a Brady Bowman. I think it was a paper, not a chrome. Someone posted it on like the Sports Card Nonsense page. I think it was a Sports Cards Nonsense page. I don't remember. One of the big sports card YouTube or Facebook pages, and said something about like, what do you guys think about this card? And a lot of the comments were, I don't necessarily have a lot of faith that that card's real inside that slab, because who would send that card to that company? It was basically a large part of the general vibe. That is not good as a grading company. I've continued to put CSG ahead of them, even though CSG doesn't necessarily sell for as much on the secondary market. But I would much rather trust CSG as opposed to HGA if I'm sending my cards into somebody, if you want subgrades or whatnot. So I think this continues to be a really rough year for HGA, and we will see if they make it to 2022. So that's all I got for you guys and girls. Curious for your thoughts and predictions in regards to grading for this upcoming year. In the comments down below, go ahead and leave those there. And then we'll be back for more predictions and retrospectives the rest of this week. So make sure you're subscribed to catch all those videos. Smash the like button. All that jazz. Catch you guys and girls on the next one. Peace.